A Wish Your Heart Makes, a Miraculous Ladybug fanfiction written and narrated by Christina Chang. Ladybug sighed contentedly as she finished buckling one of her babies into their stroller and settled down beside her husband to watch the sun setting over the Seine. Cat Noir's face was bright with happiness as he passed the red and green ice cream cone, his gentle smile widening as she slipped her arm through his and nestled closer beside him. Ladybug closed her eyes, cherishing the peacefulness of the moment, feeling the warmth of his hand rest on her leg and calmed by the steady rise and fall of his shoulders. She bolted upright as something sharp started rattling inside her mouth, scratching her cheeks as the rough taste of metal burst across her tongue. She quickly spit it out into her hand and recognized it to be a small alarm clock that was ringing loudly. Again? These alarm clocks are starting to become a nightmare. Ladybug gasped as the words flowed from her lips, and something nagged heavily at the back of her mind. She quickly glanced around and saw the whole city seemed to be filled with alarm clocks, their bells screaming urgently, demanding her attention as their echoing calls filtered warningly across the sky. She looked back to check on their children, but when she pulled down one of the little red and black hoods, she was only met with yet another clock ringing incessantly. Tears filled her eyes as the weight of her realization shattered the fantasy they'd been living in. She turned to her partner in despair. "This is a dream." Cat Noir remained unconcerned, his mind refusing to put together the pieces that were so evidently displayed in front of them, just as hers had been. He smiled tenderly back at her, while his eyes twinkled with a familiar flirtatious cleverness as he replied earnestly, "I know, milady. Living with you is my biggest dream." He cupped his hand affectionately against her cheek, his heartfelt words causing her to smile despite the heaviness weighing down on her, and for a moment she allowed herself to take comfort in them, laying an appreciative hand to his, before forcing herself to pull it away. "No, you don't understand, Cat Noir. We're in a dream." She hastily wound up the tiny alarm clock and held it between them, its sharp tinkling piercing the defenses he had layered around his heart. Ladybug's own heart broke as she saw the look of understanding slowly fall across his face. Are you saying that this is fake?" His voice timid as the ringing pressed insistently on against her ears, and Ladybug could only nod as a new wave of sorrow engulfed her. Cat Noir grimaced in pain and frustration, then desperately tried to quiet the bell in her hands. "No, Cat Noir," Ladybug exclaimed, tugging away from him and pulling out of reach, causing him to fall forward and slump despairingly across the bench at her side. Ladybug stared down at him, her mind torn with compassion and a sense of duty. "We have to wake up." Warm teardrops thudded softly at her feet as Cat Noir remained hunched over in agony, his voice filled with emotion as he protested anxiously. "But I don't want to lose all this." Ladybug's heart softened as she tenderly lifted his chin with her finger. "I don't either, my kitty." She leaned in to kiss him once more and felt him do the same, her heart breaking as she felt herself being pulled back into reality, away from the wondrous life they had so intricately shared. Ladybug's eyes flew open as her mind was freed from Jubilation's power, swiftly dodging Dark Owl's grab for her earrings before seizing his hand and twisting it behind his back. Dark Owl grunted with irritation and shot his grappling hook toward a nearby wall, causing it to ricochet back in Ladybug's direction. She leapt away, only to be met with Dark Owl's foot slamming into her chest as he kicked her across the narrow street. Ladybug let out a cry of pain as the metal doors behind her crunched from the impact. Dark Owl laughed contemptuously, but was soon cut short by an angry cry as Cat Noir hurled himself in their direction. Cat Noir charged the large villain and began pounding him ferociously, his powerful swings wild with fury and anguish as he quickly pommeled him into the ground. "Cataclysm!" His call echoed dangerously throughout the streets, his voice thick with indignant outrage and laced with suffering as he lifted his hand into the air, the destructive energy boiling madly around his open fist. For a split second, Ladybug saw the signs of struggle constricting across his face and was suddenly aware of what he intended to do. "No!" Her desperate cry sounded weakly from her place on the ground as she vainly reached out her hand to stop him, seeing he was about to thrust his hand into the broad chest of the former Mr. Damocles. His clawed fingers froze inches from the man's heart as the dark energy curled threateningly between them, Cat Noir's shoulders heaving rapidly as his eyes slowly lost their burning flare. He paused, a a struggle of justice and grief warring across his face as his eyes wandered to the defiant ones lying beneath him. And resignedly he pressed his hand against the hard mask, releasing the mega akuma that had been implanted within. Ladybug swung out her yo-yo, its typical shine and click seeming almost foreign to her, as if reliving the events of a past memory, and performing based on habit rather than anything else. Her mind wandered as she rambled off to Mr. Damocles about the lucky charm she had made, reminding him to be wary of negative emotions. Monarch was still out there. They could be facing akuma victims every day. She nearly crumpled at the thought, but quickly hardened her resolve and tapped into her confident professional mode. She was a superhero. She and Cat Noir were partners who trusted and protected each other. They had defeated many villains before, and they would defeat many villains again. This was her normal. So why did her heart ache for a time and place that had never existed? Her gaze wandered to Cat Noir, who stood lifelessly in the middle of the street, then looked down with a soft sigh while her hands lingered around the lucky charm clock between her fingers, not wanting to lose the hope that all this could be fixed, but knowing repairs needed to be made. Miraculous Ladybug! Her voice was still strong with hard determination and resolve, but the words lacked their usual sense of cheer and triumph. Even before the clock left her fingertips, she knew the damage would not be undone. The soft swirls of magical ladybugs swept their way down the streets, dodging between civilians and flowing within buildings as they brought restoration to the city. But none drew near the two heroes as they stood alone in the center of the now empty street. Glimpses of white outfits and picnics and bottles filled her vision, the ridiculousness of it becoming glaringly apparent as every new memory seemed more obscure than the last, with doll babies, alarm clocks, and fake mustaches. And yet, they were filled with smiles and warmth and laughter that felt so real. A reality that was now lost forever. Ladybug had inched closer to Cat Noir as they watched the many ladybugs repairing the city, hoping the closer they were, the easier it'd be for the miraculous beings to find them and encompass them with fresh memories as they had once before. As the last tendrils of hope faded from view, she silently turned to Cat Noir, who refused to meet her gaze, his eyes fixed numbly on the ground as he ducked his head away from her. Ladybug clutched her hands together, unsure of what to do, longing to comfort him, but fearing the cruelty of further torturing him with any false hope. The sharp choking sound that escaped his lips was the only invitation she needed as she swiftly wrapped her arms around him and pulled him into a close hug. His body shook as sobs violently racked his chest. His breathing came in ragged gasps as he attempted to muffle them. His arms encircled gently around her, gripping tighter as his cries deepened and his tears rained down against her shoulder. Ladybug felt the ache in her own chest grow stronger as a lump rose in her throat, and she clung to him all the more fiercely. Neither spoke as they grieved the loss and unfairness of it all, a current of pain and longing flowing between them that no one else would understand. After some time, Cat Noir's broken sobs grew quiet, with only a shuddered breath interrupting the steady rhythm of their hearts, as they stood quietly together, hidden by the shadow of an awning and ignoring the questioning stares from passing bystanders, their faces buried in a tight embrace, once again existing in a world of their own. The Miraculous beeped warningly, and Ladybug's eyes flickered toward the art store, knowing she had unfinished business to address with so clean, but remained motionless, not wanting to be the first to let go. Cat Noir pulled away almost immediately, his sensitive ears twitching slightly at the sound, and he gave a slight sigh of relief as the repetitive noise grew silent again, indicating the first wave of warning was over. "Well, I guess our time is up," Cat Noir said dryly, sending her a half-hearted smile that still trailed heavily with sadness. Ladybug watched helplessly as he gave her a quick nod and turned in the opposite direction, slowly pulling a stick from his belt as he prepared to leave, his shoulders still slumped defeatedly. Her earrings sounded again as her eyes darted back and forth between the art store and her partner, before hurriedly running up behind him and taking hold of his shoulder, causing him to turn around. "Cat Noir, don't go anywhere, okay? There's something I have to take care of real quick, but after that we can recharge the Kwamis and meet up for a little while, if that's okay with you." A bit of warmth returned to his eye and he nodded in agreement. "Of course. See you soon," he added, jumping up to a nearby rooftop before disappearing into an alley below. Ladybug glanced back at the art store and saw Sockling, who was still tending to some of the signs outside. She tiredly wiped a hand over her eyes, feeling the stains of tears had mostly hardened and faded away from view, and took a deep breath as she prepared her best undaunted Ladybug smile. Ladybug slowly dangled her feet over the edge of the building from where she sat overlooking the Eiffel Tower, her mind drifting aimlessly as she moved them about in small circles, the deep yellow glow of the sunset filling the atmosphere with its soothing presence, finally allowing her to breathe. Her feet stilled at the sound of someone landing behind her shoulders tensing slightly as Cat Noir made his way over, but she managed a small smile and welcome before turning her gaze back to the streets below. He took his seat several steps away from her, farther than he normally would, and her heart ached to see the distance placed between them. If only things could go back to the way they had been. She longed to comfort him, to draw him close, take a hold of his hand, lay her head against his arm, but no, what was she thinking? She was in love with Adrian, right? She looked down at her feet as floods of a former life poured over her. She thought of the way he had held her so tenderly, the joy and sincerity in his eyes when they had said their vows, the way he had treasured every moment with their children and the life they had made, the way his eyes followed her with such love and admiration everywhere she went, the warmth of his laughter mixed with his whispered endearments. He had loved her so completely, and she had loved him. Cat Noir broke the silence, shifting her attention back into reality that hung over them like a heavy cloud of smoke. A reality where Monarch was still a threat, and Ladybug and Cat Noir weren't in love. How did Monarch give the power of Jubilation to Mr. Damocles without giving him a Miraculous? I don't know. I don't get it. The two sat solemnly for a moment, staring quietly into the distance below. Then Cat Noir asked softly, "Ladybug, the power of Jubilation, it's supposed to show our deepest desires, isn't it?" "Yeah. But that wasn't real, right?" He seemed to fold it on himself as the words left his tongue, and the absurdity of the dream seemed to hang between them mockingly. "Oh, don't even get me started," Ladybug responded, rolling her eyes as she continued dryly. "The wedding, the babies." Her voice grew quieter as her face fell, and she felt a slight sting grow in her eye. "Totally fake." "Are you sure?" He tilted his head slightly as his gaze flickered searchingly over her face. "Totally fake." The words tumbled about her mind, her eyes drifting sadly to the side as she thought back on those moments, the fanciful memories that still held such fondness and joy in her heart, and she knew that wasn't what her partner had really been asking. Looking back, the dreams were obviously fake. No one in their right mind would dream to have a wedding with only superheroes or doll babies for children. But they had shared this dream. They remembered every moment they had spent together, every loving word, every caring touch. She had said she didn't want it to end either. Did that mean she wanted to live a life with him? Did she love him as she had in their dream? Or was it just the euphoria of the Miraculous convincing her that she did, in an attempt to maintain its power over her? Monarch must have altered it somehow, to trick us. Yeah, that's gotta be it. Ladybug tried to convince herself of that reasoning, but the words seemed to fall flat, and she found herself only more confused and uncertain. Cat Noir appeared to accept it, his shoulders relaxing as an absent smile played across his face. Of course. Otherwise it would be totally super weird, wouldn't it? "Right," Ladybug affirmed readily, her voice dropped slightly as she added, "Totally super weird." The silence between them grew comfortable once again, the peaceful stillness of the sunset gently enveloping them, promising the hope of a better tomorrow. After a while, Cat Noir shifted from his seat and readied his staff. "Well, I should get going. Plag's probably going to demand a whole barrel of camembert when I get back, and I have a feeling he'll probably be missed soon." "Are you sure you're going to be okay, Cat Noir?" Ladybug asked, standing up beside him. His smile softened at her concern, and he glanced shyly away with a faraway look in his eye. "Yeah, thanks, Ladybug." Though I probably will have to change all my alarm sounds to kitten meows from now on, he added, a cheerful energy returning to his voice. I'm surprised you haven't done that already, Ladybug quipped, though her heart wasn't in it. You really had me worried earlier. When your Miraculous beeped, is that going to bother you too? Maybe you could talk to Plag about changing it, at least temporarily. I hear suits are a lot more adaptable than we think. And I wouldn't want you to think of everything that happened every time we have to split up. She finished quietly, her eyes falling to the ground. Cat Noir laid a gentle hand on his shoulder. Lady, it always pains me when we have to split up. But I think my Miraculous will be a reminder of all the times I had to do this before. And even though it has to end sometimes, I know that whenever I put this suit back on, I have all this back. Of all the things we lost, I'm glad I still have you. This is real. Our partnership is real. All those times we spent together and the trust we built while fighting by each other's side, they can never take that from us. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. Things are different now. Or the same, I guess. But it's real and meaningful and worth fighting for. We have our whole future ahead of us. But for now, all we can do is focus on doing our best with the time we have. And if nothing else, I'm glad this is real. He squeezed her shoulder reassuringly, while Ladybug stared up at him in awed silence, before giving him a slight nod as he pulled away. See you tomorrow? He called, giving her a cheeky grin as he tossed his fingers in a parting salute before jumping off his stick into the streets below. Ladybug waved half-heartedly, knowing he wouldn't see it. Yeah, tomorrow. Her voice faded as the words tumbled from her lips. Then she quickly pulled out her bug phone, ignoring the conspicuous warmth she felt rising in her cheeks as her fingers tapped delicately across the keys. I'm glad I still have you, kitty. Thanks for listening. Wow, this episode was crazy. I don't even know what to think anymore. But anyway, that's why I wrote this story. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm thinking of actually making a part 2 for it, because I feel like there's still a lot that needs to be addressed. And the only thing is, I'm not really sure if I want to lead it up to the next, newest episode, keep it kind of canon, or if I should just throw a reveal in there just for fun. So if you have any thoughts on that, do let me know in the comments, and I'll try to lean it that way. But yeah, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to listen to this. I hope it brightens it and helps, process that episode, because it was insane. And yeah, I feel like it's definitely going to be a turning point in the series. But I hope you enjoyed, and feel free to check out some of my other videos, or don't. I need to go to bed. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. I love you all. Hope you have a wonderful day. Good night or morning. Oh, and for those of you who are interested in my Hits or Head story, I've not forgotten about it. I am really close to coming out with the next part, but I have now unlocked the community post page or something. You can find it under my channel, and I made a poll. Feel free to go vote of whether you'd rather have consistent videos or spontaneous videos that are just whenever I come up with a story, or if you'd rather me wait and make kind of like a backlog of some stories to save up until I can post them consistently. It takes longer, but it can't be longer than the months I've already spent. I'm so sorry. Thank you so much for your patience. And it is still in the works, still coming. I hope you'll enjoy it as much as I've enjoyed writing it. But yeah, that's coming out soon. So keep an eye out for that if you like it. Bye.